Angel and Gaza. Is your name Angel? Just Angel?
Yeah, my name is Angel. Gaza's my husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Angel, so we see Nancy, Angel, and Al. Hello, everyone. Really quickly, if you could just drop in the chat where you're from. I'm just curious. I'm in Chicago right now. Um, Lovely Chicago. It's getting a little chilly out here on our side, which is definitely um, telling me that we're probably going to have a pretty cold winter. I think we already had some snow yesterday, some light snow. So,
Really?
yeah, hopefully you guys are in warmer climates.
Uh,
Jacksonville, Florida, very cool. New York City, awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop in.
well, you
Hi,
want me
Johnny. Yeah, I was going to say, Corey, did you want to kick us off?
I'm going to start with the what's up, everybody? Glad to see everybody here. Thank you for being here. Um, so again, we have I'm sorry, I always mess up your name. It's Claire, right?
Clary.
Clary.
Mhm.
I say it right any other time. Don't mind me, guys. I'm sorry. I'm a little under the weather. Cold is catching up to me. Which is bad timing. But anyway, thank you everybody for being here. Welcome to another Black Podcasters Association workshop. This is our second one for the month of October. So thank you guys for being here. Today we have Clary Johnson. She's from the CEO, owner of Tap That digital marketing or Tap That marketing. And she's going to be doing her presentation on digital marketing demystified. She comes to us with a background of 10 years of digital marketing experience. She combines education from leading media institutions, broadcast journalism. Her experience combines education from leading media institutions and broadcast journalism from the College Media University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and strategic public relations, Annenberg University of Southern California. She has more than 7 years of internal and executive in corporate communications at leading companies, including Honda North America and Google Cloud. And she enjoys collaborating with small business owners and solopreneurs, including coaches and podcasters to help them tell their stories digitally and transforming each piece of content into many forms across broadcast, audio, visual, and written mediums. She comes highly recommended, and it was introduced to me by Troy Sandridge, who did a workshop with us earlier this year. So, damn, I had a brain fart. I was gonna say this. If you ask your questions, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I guess Clary will open up the floor for any questions you have, but it's all yours. And thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me, Corey, and thank you so much for the lovely, warm introduction. I have a slide introducing myself, but I guess I can skip that one now. But I might slightly touch on a little bit more of my experience as we move along here. I'm going to go ahead and pin these slides and unpin myself so that you can, or can I unpin myself? Let's see. Yep. So that we can have those front and center. As Corey mentioned, we're going to be talking about digital marketing demystified. If you're here today, it sounds like from the conversation I had with Angel, like several of you are likely a little bit more accelerated in terms of your digital marketing knowledge. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about specifically what you're doing with your digital marketing in terms of growing and promoting and sharing your podcast. So we'll have some moments throughout the presentation today where we'll chat a little bit and find out what's working for you and maybe areas where you want to grow and areas where you're struggling a little bit. As I think one of the things that I want to mention is if you have questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat. This is a small group, so you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and to ask a question if there's a slide that, or if there's a topic that you want to dig into a little bit more. I'll do my best to take a few pauses here and there to give you an opportunity to share your thoughts as well. And then if you also want to just, if you'd also prefer to just hold on to your questions until the end of the presentations, you're welcome to do so as well. So let's go ahead and just hop in. So congratulations on launching your podcast. If you're here, chances are you have a podcast, you've launched it, or maybe you're well on your way to launching podcasts. In my conversation with Corey a little bit earlier, I saw that there were maybe a few producers in the crowd as well. So if you're on the end of helping others launch their podcast, definitely give yourself a pat on the back, because podcasting, as we know, is hard. It's hard work. It takes a lot of effort and energy, and a lot of grit and passion to really produce something. And let me kind of go back here. Okay. To really present and share your content with the world. It takes a lot of vulnerability as well, and we have to let go of our sense of perfectionism to get there. But once we do, and we start really connecting with our ideal audiences, it can feel really good, especially if we are advocating for a cause or an idea, or something that we really care about, and we want to share that with the world. So congratulations on being here today. You're well on your way to really growing your podcast, and taking it to that next level. I just want to share just a some quick statistics here, some metrics to just show you the state of where we are in the digital world. So we're going to be talking a little bit later about why digital is important, how it can really help to expand your business, and we'll talk about some strategies that you can employ to get there. But when we look at the state of where we are now, we have a little bit over 5 billion people around the world who are using the internet today. So what that tells us is that really, and when we think about COVID in the past couple of years and all that's happened, many more of those people, there's been a huge influx of folks who are moving online. I remember starting at the University of Illinois in journalism, and this is when blogs and social media was just getting started, and there was so much fear about the future of journalism, because now anybody can be a journalism and anyone can create content, right? It's not just it's not just it's not just for a select few people. So with COVID and with the past couple of years, there's been a huge influx of people who are coming online and have really had to bite the bullet and adapt to this new digital space. And so this is a great time to have a podcast. It's a great time to share your content digitally. 92% of those people who use mobile, who have a mobile phone, use a mobile phone to go online. So when we think of all the people who are accessing the internet, a large majority of those folks are using their phones to do so. And so when we think about digital content, we want to make sure that whatever we're creating is going to be applicable, as it's going to look good, feel good, sound good on mobile as well as on a desktop. And then also, almost 60% of all people on Earth are active on social media. So what that tells us, and I'm just going to slide over here really quick. What that tells us is that we really need to be leveraging social media to spread the word. When we think about 5 billion people around the world using the internet, and over half of those people are actually on social media, well, that tells us that we have a large audience to tap into. Now, of course, a lot of those folks are not necessarily in our target market, but it should give you a lot of confidence that, even if your podcast is small and you're growing and maybe your audience isn't as big as you want it to be, the people that you want to connect with are out there. And so it's our jobs to really share our stories and tell them in a digital way. I wanted to do a little bit more research and really understand from all the people who are online using social media, what does it look like for Black podcast audience, for people who like to consume, for people of color who like to consume podcasts. And this is something that I found from PR Week, saying that the Black podcast audience is an untapped market, according to some new research. Well, what's that research? Let's find out. So what we find is almost 40% of Black Americans over the age of 18 are listening monthly to a podcast. What that tells us is that if we're saying, hey, this is a huge untapped market, and yet almost half of Black Americans over the age of 18 are listening monthly, well, what are some of the causes, or what are some of the content that is available in our podcasts that 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 our audience are demanding? So really we want to look at, are we supplying and are we delivering the kind of content that Black listeners are looking for and are searching for? And I think for everyone on this call, for all the podcasters here and producers, you're in the best position to deliver that content, right? Because you understand what the trials and tribulations and challenges and triumphs of the Black community are, and you're able to best tailor and create content that really speaks to this demographic. 26% are listening weekly. So when we think about that, and we think about the frequency, then that can kind of inform how often we're actually producing our podcasts. But then also when we think about marketing, how often we are creating touch points and touch basing with our audience as well. And then we see 57% across all genders and 62% for men are listening. So when we think about what kind of content do Black men like to listen to, or what kind of content is going to be helpful for them, and what is moving them forward? This is helpful for us when we think about the content that we're delivering. And then we have a few more metrics on this slide. 47% of Black listeners consume podcasts at home. So Angel, you and I were briefly talking about this a little bit earlier about, well, what is our audience doing when they're listening to podcasts? Are they listening to podcasts when they wear the work? Are they listening when they're waking up in the morning and they're getting ready for work? Are they listening when they get off of work? And what kind of state of mind are they in? And how does that influence the type of content that they want to consume at that time? 65% our monthly listeners are using a mobile device, and 32% say it's easier to listen or watch with others. So we've got a lot of advocates as well. And this is one of my favorites. 86% of Black listeners have taken some action to support a podcast or podcaster. So it's really important that we put ourselves out there, because I think because we really want to be able to, the more that we put ourselves out there, the more opportunity that we have to capture the minds and hearts of our listeners, and to get them to support us. They want to support our podcast. They want to support our content. It's our job to really connect with them and give them content to share with others. So I'm Clary. Corey already introduced me. I have a little bit over 10 years of marketing and communications experience. My background is in broadcast journalism as well as strategic public relations. And then I'm also the founder of Tap That Digital, which is a digital marketing company based here in Chicago, Illinois. We serve small businesses as well as solopreneurs. So that includes podcasters as well as coaches, and really we're end to end. So we look at the full life cycle of a customer's journey online and deploy marketing strategies to help our clients really reach their audiences at every stage of that life cycle. So our agenda for today is we're just going to get started. We're going to touch base and just kind of understand the basics of digital marketing. And again, if you're on this call, chances are you already have some idea of what marketing is, and really you might be wondering, well, what makes marketing digital? So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. We'll talk about some of the benefits of digital marketing, and we've covered some of that already. Some forms and formats, the 5 pillars of digital marketing, how to choose your channels, and then we'll also look at some great examples from two of my favorite podcasters who I think are doing digital marketing really well. And then also we'll look at some tools that you can take away and put into your toolkit. So let's get started. All right, so when we think about digital marketing, I'm curious, what are some of the words that come to mind? And you can actually drop those in the chat. And so the first question is, what are some things that come to mind when you think about marketing or you think about digital marketing? And then the second question is, when you look at this word cloud, do you see any of those ideas or those thoughts here? Do you see anything here that maybe doesn't come to mind immediately when you think about digital marketing? And I'll just pause here for a second. So go ahead and drop that in the chat. What comes to mind when you think about digital marketing? So we have Reels, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all social media. Guys, there's so much more to digital marketing. But I love this. Yeah. So when we think about digital marketing, usually the first thing that we go to is social media. So that's why I like pulling this together. But there are other things, right? We have websites. We have instant messaging. Who has a text messaging campaign that they're doing with their listeners? We have paid advertising. So when we think about paid advertising, that can be Google ads or social media ads. Email marketing is actually one of my favorite types of marketing to do because it's very effective. It's that one-on-one touch point with your customer. They're opting in to receive some kind of information or communication from you. And what you're going to do is you're going to deliver that value to them in the form of an email. We have influencers, so connecting with other influencers. And when we think about influencers, you're an influencer, right? So think about everyone in your camp or whoever's in your digital marketing network. Who else can you connect with? Other podcasters, and how can you tap into their audiences as well? That's why it's so effective to have guests on your podcast and to be guests on other people's podcasts, right? Because you're tapping into another audience that's in alignment with your message and your story, the story that you want to tell. We have a lot of social media here, of course, and then let me see if there's anything else that really sticks out. We have courses, right? So one of my clients has a podcast, but she also has a course. So there's a lot of cross-marketing that happens when we think about how do we create content within our, how do we create content that's really aligned with the story that we're telling on our podcast. I think Angel mentioned earlier, one of the challenges that she's facing is, well, or it's a challenge or maybe just an observation that her listeners from one podcast are not necessarily cross-listening to other ones, right? So even though you might promote another podcast, it can be a little bit difficult to get them to make that transition or that jump to listen to something else. So thinking about maybe the solution isn't necessarily to get them to listen to another podcast, but to provide a different type of value that's related to the content that they're already consuming, right? And then, of course, we like to talk about marketing analytics as well, because that's a really great way for us to measure our performance. I just want to check newsletter. You want to get into text. So I see Angel said she has a email newsletter. Awesome. Okay, so I found this quote online from Jennifer. She said, if you build it, you may still need, and this said Google Ads, and I just put digital marketing in there. I think we've heard, many of you may have heard the quote, if you build it, they will come. But if you build it, you still have to put yourself out there, right? So it's not a situation where we just create a podcast, launch it, put it out there, and then tons of people are starting to flood our lines and listen. We do have to do our due diligence to really share what we're doing in other ways. And this is a quote, and I don't know if Troy is actually in the call today. I know he said he was going to join, but this is something I found online. Troy had posted this on his Twitter, and that I thought really hit the nose on the head. Imagination is the engine, right? So when we think about our podcast, it started with an idea. Content is the fuel, right? So we want to create that idea by creating the content. Social media is the highway. So when we talk about digital marketing, social media is just one channel that we can use to reach our audiences. There are lots of other types of channels. Marketing is the roadmap. So marketing really is the strategy. It's really telling us, well, when we really take a step back, when we do the research, when we really connect with our audience and find out who our audience is and where they are, then we can begin to build a roadmap for how to reach them. And then sales is the destination. I would also say here, I think impact is also the destination. So we do want to make a living. I think a lot of us, if we have our podcast, maybe it's a hobby, but for many of you, it's likely something that you want to do full time, or something that you want to make your make your primary form of living. Well, then we definitely need marketing, right? Because we need to be able to monetize the content that we're putting out on a podcast. But then also we want to make an impact. I think working with podcasters, one of the things that I've noticed is they're really passionate about the topics that they're talking about, right? And there's a purpose behind why I'm telling this podcast. Maybe I found a gap in a market that I feel is unfulfilled. And so that's something that I want to talk about. Or I'm listening to all of this content. Remember, we looked at some of those statistics earlier about Black listeners. Well, are those listeners finding the kind of content that really resonates with them? Well, you're in the position to deliver that, right? By the way, at Find Troy is where you can find Troy on Twitter. He's also on LinkedIn. He just hosted Inbound too. So he's a great person to follow, great marketing tips and tidbits there. And here's just some quick benefits of going digital. I'm not going to go into super depth about these, but I just want to touch on them. Digital marketing, when we think about marketing, one of the reasons why a lot of folks say that they don't want to go, they haven't gone digital, or they haven't really jumped into digital, or maybe they've tried a few things, but they haven't totally invested, is because they think it's expensive. And it can be expensive, but we have to go about it the right way. And I'm actually going to be giving a talk on Sunday at the Afros and Audio about how to build your digital toolkit without breaking the bank, and by doing this in a cost-efficient way. Chances are, if we're building our podcast, you might be working a second job, a part-time job, right? If you have been able to take it to the point where your podcast is your full-time your full-time gig, then congratulations. You've done a lot of hard work to get it to that point. I already know. But when we think about that, and we think about, okay, well, we have a podcast, how am I going to fund it? Is the first question. And how am I going to make this something that's sustainable, that I can continue? Then the second question is, well, if I want to market this and I want to monetize my podcast, how much money do I really have to put behind it to get the kind of ROI that I want? And so digital marketing can actually be really cost efficient. Think about, I asked a question earlier about, what do you think about when you think about digital marketing? What did we hear? Social media. When you think about social media, how much does it cost to create a social media profile? Nothing. $0. It costs nothing to create a social media profile, a social media platform. Now, with that being said, of course, if you want to do ads on social media, that's going to cost you a little bit of money. If you want to hire someone to do your social media for you, That's going to cost you a little bit of money, but you can be digitally savvy and you can make social media work for you in a way that it's paying you without you having to pour a ton of money into it. Global reach, again, we looked at some metrics earlier about more than 5 billion people are online. That's a huge untapped market, that's a huge market that we have access to. Again, not all 5 billion of those people are going to be your target audience. In fact, maybe only 1% will be, but even 1% is quite a lot. So digital marketing really allows us to traverse borders and across cities, across countries, and really around the world. Shareability, right? Again, when we think about social media or even emails, how easy is it to just forward an email? Digital marketing is so shareable, and that's one of the things why one of the benefits is, and when we think about the customer journey and really transforming those customers into advocates, when we're creating digital content, we're creating content that people can share with other people, right? And so digital marketing really can empower us to be able to really expand and grow our content that way. Measurability. So there's so many tools out there today, even when you think about the platforms that you're using, and I'm curious to hear about what platforms you guys are on, like if you're on Captivate or Podbean. A lot of these platforms have some kind of metrics that are tied to them that you can use to really understand your audience, to understand your reach. Now, generally speaking, when we look at these metrics, what's the one metrics that we all go to first? Downloads. How many people downloaded our content? But there's so much more insights that we can gain. Like when I talked to Angel a little bit earlier, she was saying, hey, I know exactly who my audience is. They're women ages 27 to 45, right? They're single mothers. So when we understand who our audiences are by using those metrics, we can better be able to create content, but also create marketing content and reach those listeners where they are. I think the biggest thing about digital marketing to remember is that there is an actual person on the other end, right? I think we forget that, right? I think it's really easy to create content in our own heads and to think about, okay, well, this is what I like, and this is what I think is important. This is the message that I want to share. But really, when we think about digital marketing, it's a conversation, and a conversation is a two-way street, right? So it's us telling our story, but then we also want to get feedback from our audience and use that feedback to really tailor and make our content better. And the more that we do that, the happier our listeners are going to be, the more likely they're going to advocate for us and for our content and share that content with other people. And then that's how our audience and that's how our listeners grow. Credibility. So this is specifically thinking about when we talk about credibility, one of the things that a lot of people think about is SEO, right? Search engine optimization. So I'll throw this question out to you. When you hear about a podcast, or maybe you heard about a new product, right? That someone, maybe someone said, hey, I have this new soap that I really like. It's called Dr. Bronner's. What's the first thing that you typically do? Right? Typically, you're going to go and you're going to search Dr. Bronner's, and you're going to want to learn more about that product. Well, it's going to help Dr. Bronner's if they have a website that you can click into and learn more about them. It's going to help them if they have social media profiles that you can click to and look through and kind of see what kind of products they have. And it's going to help if they have tons and tons of customers who are commenting on their photos and their content and saying how great the product is, because the more that you see that, the more likely you are to then buy right? So that's that conversion process that we're talking about. And really, when we talk about digital marketing, we're talking about establishing a digital footprint so that when people go to find out about you, it's not like, oh, they said they had a podcast. They said it was called, you know, Going to the Moon. But when I looked up Going to the Moon podcast, nothing came up, right? It kills your credibility. So we really want to establish a very strong digital footprint. And then personalization. This is more so geared towards when we think about email marketing. This is one of my favorite things about email marketing is that you can actually market to someone by using their real name, right? I can send someone an email and in the subject line, "Hey Clary, check out this our new episode. I think you'll really love it." Or, "Hey Clary, um, did you check out the episode that we posted last week on how to on urban gardening? I think this is something that you'll really enjoy. Click here, take a look." I'm more likely to click that than to click something that says new episode on urban gardening. When I see my name, right, I have an emotional reaction to that makes me want to click. It makes me want to find out more. That's one of the things that I love about email marketing and digital marketing is the fact that you can really personalize it to your audience. I'm going to pause here really quickly because I know we've kind of gone through a lot of content. So I'm going to go here to, so I see someone said Google it. Yeah, that's the first thing that you do, right? Lesson one, podcasters learn. If you build it, they don't come. It's true. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts before we head into this next section? Let's see. I'll pause here for a few seconds. All right. Well, if you do have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat, and then we'll revisit that as we go along. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about some forms and formats of digital marketing. I'm curious, when you were a kid, when you were in school, what was your favorite way to learn? Right? So we all have different types of learners. We have visual learners, people who like to who learn by listening, people who learn by writing, by reading, and people who learn by actually like hands-on. What kind of learner were you? Hands-on learner? Reading out loud, Shamiko. Actually doing. Yep, Johnny, I learned by doing. I'm the same. Songs. Oh, that's amazing. Visual hands-on. Yeah, so I was also a hands-on learner. You could tell me a million ways to do one thing and I wouldn't get it until I actually did it myself. I think that's one of the reasons why math came so hard for me is because there's so many formulas and my mom's like, "You just do it this way." And I'm like, "But I can't touch this, right? I can't physically engage with this. This is really hard for me." Now, if you were to take marbles and put those in front of me and give me 5 and then take 3 away and say, "How many do you have left?" Well, I'm like, "Oh, that's 2," right? I can engage with that. So when we think about how we like to learn, well, that's the same thing when we approach our marketing. How do your listeners like to learn? How do they like to consume and receive content? And your listeners are going to be very different. Some listeners are going to like to learn through visually, right? Some listeners are gonna like to learn by auditory, so maybe they only listen to your podcast. Some listeners want to read, so when we think about blogging is a great way, or transcribing our podcast is a great way for those folks to engage with our content. And some people like experiences. So when we think about creating communities and creating events around our content, these are all ways that we can do marketing, right? That's in a different channel and different format than just social media. Social media is a very, very visual element. It's very auditory element, but it doesn't necessarily touch on, and it also incorporates some editorial too. So if you think about your comment section or captions and things like that, well, we want to make sure that we're optimizing our content so that anyone in any stage is able to enjoy it, right? Um, and I think that's probably why social media is so popular, is because it really does kind of traverse all of these different ways that people like to engage and consume content. Okay. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the 5 pillars of digital marketing. And when I work with my clients, specifically when I'm doing any kind of digital marketing strategy for them, I like to break it down in this way. I like to think about, well, one, how are we educating our audience, right? Chances are, if your audience are coming, they want to learn something new, or they want to be inspired. They either want to learn something new about themselves, something new about the world, or something new about others, right? Or they just want to learn something that they didn't know before. So how are we educating our listeners? And I have some good examples. I have a podcaster that we're going to talk about who really, he's a sports podcaster, and really his education is around mental health in sports, right? So how are we in educating our audience who's already engaged about, well, why is this even relevant for them? Like, why is mental health in sports, why is that a problem, or why is that an issue? I don't want to assume that just because they're listening to the podcast that they know, right? I want to share that information with them. And so how can we educate them? How can we engage them? What are some things that we can do? Virtual events, building communities. How can we engage our audiences around the content that we're sharing? Inspiring. How do we inspire them to take action? How do we lift them up, uplift them, and make them feel good, right? We want to evoke an emotion inside of them. The more that you can actually touch the heart of your listener, and the more that you can move them to action, the more likely they are to come back and listen more and more. I think, Angel, when we talked about your podcast and we talked about it's a scripted about 2 imperfect people perfecting their love for one another and overcoming toxicity through forgiveness. I get an emotion, right? I immediately, when you were talking about that, thought about a relationship, right? And when I think about that relationship, man, I get tingles, or maybe I feel a little bit sad. Well, that tells us a lot about why people are coming to consume your content, because there's an emotional reaction that comes when I'm interacting with you, right? So, how do we inspire them, like with our content? What are some other ways that we can evoke that emotion and inspire them? Maybe your content is inspiring them to have healthier relationships, right? By going through this journey, through this story, right? Entertain. So we want to have fun with it too. And people like to be entertained. Another reason why social media is so popular. People love to go. They love to laugh. They want to have fun, especially these days, and especially in the past couple of years where we're quarantined and locked up. People want to, get out. They want to get loose. They want to have fun. They want to feel good. What are some ways that we can entertain our listeners with our content? And then activate. What are some ways that we can activate them to action and take action, whether that's sharing the content with someone else, downloading, coming to listen to episodes over and over again, whether it's promoting and sharing the cause that you care about, um, or taking action. Remember, we talked about, Troy talked about sales as a destination. So how do we activate them to actually make a purchase from us, or to take another action or take another step in their journey with us? What are some calls to action that we can deploy to get our listeners to expand and deepen their relationship with us and in our podcast content? All right. So we're going to talk about some different channels. We talked about one, we talked about social media, and I did mention that there are lots and lots and lots of other different channels that we can choose from. In fact, digital marketing can be quite overwhelming with how many platforms there are that are out there. So we'll go through some of these channels, and we'll just talk about some of the main ones. Before we go, and I'm actually going to go back to this slide, I want you to drop in the comments when you think about your podcast and how you're marketing, what channels, where's your podcast? Where are you promoting? What channels? If I were to, do a search online, what would pop up for your podcast? Where are you? Instagram, website. Dreadful question. Website. Pinterest. Oh, very cool. Shamiko, I'm curious. So if you're a podcaster, and I'm assuming you are, what's your podcast about? Everywhere. Website comes up first. Excellent. Instagram. Wonderful. Pinterest is a hot spot. Yes, it is. It's really slept on, y'all. I love daddy issues. Oh, interesting. I'd be curious to hear about how you're integrating Pinterest into that. Are you comfortable with speaking really quickly if you want to unmute your mic?
Sure. My pins are like quotes from the guests that I've had, or just things that I think might catch someone's attention, to get them to go to my website and listen to the podcast. I've not done a lot, but I did some a few years ago, and then maybe earlier this year, and maybe May, I listened to another class on how to implement Pinterest for your podcast. I haven't done any of those updated tasks and tips, but you can do boards now. What they used a different phrase for it. It wasn't just like a regular Pinterest board. But anyway, you can have like all related things. I don't know. I can't think of the accurate word for it. But you can have several of them. And so like maybe I want to talk about getting therapy for your daddy issues and the different therapists that I've had on my show. And I might have that as one stream of thought on Pinterest, versus another one might be how it shows up in your relationships, not necessarily getting help for it.
Thank you for sharing. That's wonderful. I love that you're using Pinterest that way. That's creative, right? And that's where we want to go. We want to think about how can we take the content that we're creating for our podcast and engage our listeners in another way, because some people might find you through a website, they might find you on social media, they might find you if you do any kind of podcast ads where you have ads that run on other people's podcasts and they find you there. When we think about how people find us, they're coming from all of these different channels. And so when we think about, well, how can we creatively use the channels that we have to create content that people want, and to really take the content that we've worked so hard to create as a podcast and repurpose it in a new way. I love that idea of using Pinterest as a way to help people heal from their daddy issues. Anyone else want to share how they're using their channels to market their podcast? Not to put you on the spot. Well, if you want to share, oh, all right, Al, you have the floor.
Hey, I feel like, well, I feel like I'm struggling with the SEO part, but I mean, I feel like if I got stronger with that, I feel like my website would just soar, and then I think everything else would be kind of because I'm still trying to figure out too what my listeners like, where they catch it at. But it's usually when I post a link on my website. So when I post the link on my website to my socials, that's when it kind of hits. But I feel like the website should be able to work on its own, if that makes sense.
And I actually find it interesting that you're saying for a podcast that people are finding you when you post a link on your website, because that tells me that a lot of people are actually visiting your website to access your podcast. Does that sound about right? Do you have your podcasts like live on your website where they can just kind of click and listen?
Yeah, well, some of them I put strictly onto my site, but I mean, for the most part, I just post like the Apple Spotify link onto, the embedder on my website. If that makes any sense. I don't know. I think I
Yeah.
need to zero in a little bit on it.
No, that makes total sense to me. So you're embedding, so you have a couple ways. There's some episodes that you post natively to your website that maybe they don't necessarily live on Spotify. And so that might be some exclusive content that if people who know you and know how to engage with you and know how to find your content know, hey, if I go to his website, I'm going to find content here that I might not necessarily find on Spotify or Instagram, which or Spotify or Apple Music or one of those platforms. And then you're also saying that you're using the embedder from I'm guessing your host platform onto your website, so that anything that is populating on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Google Music, that's populating onto your website. So that's another way for people to access your content. I'm a huge advocate for websites. When you talk about SEO, one of the things, people will give you all types of advice on SEO, but a lot of people won't tell you that your SEO will increase just based on the length and how long you have that domain and how long you've been using those keywords, right? So I've had my website, my company has changed over the years, but I've had my website for 8 years. And so if you look up TabThat, if you look up TabThat, my website may probably come up just because I've had the domain for so long, right? So there is a part of this, like, yes, you need to do some work when it comes to keywords and SEOs, but there is a part of it where just having the established channel and having that platform also can boost your SEO over time. So I love to hear that you're using your website in this way, because I think it can be a great way for you to share more information about you, right? Because you can host a blog on a website. You can host merchandise on websites, and we're going to look at a couple of other examples as we go along. But there's so much that you can do. And the way I look at a website is it's the home, right, for your content, right? It's where your content lives. And so build that home out. Build it out as much as you can. Okay. Setting up Google Business. Yep, Google Business is a great way to boost your SEO. That was from Johnny. Great tip. Domain authority. Yep. Yes, so Google Business, having that is a great way. I mean, think about it. How many people are using Google? Literally billions of people are using Google every single day. And so just having that Google Business account and having that presence there can also boost your SEO as well. Okay. And of course it is Google, so they're going to prioritize their platform. So that's why you want to be there. And I also, and this is not totally related to this last note, but when we talk about Google, we talked about a little bit about analytics before. Google Analytics is another really great platform for getting some detailed information about your audiences that may not necessarily be available on your host platforms. I remember I was on Captivate the other day trying to pull some analytics for my customer, and I was surprised at the lack of demographic information that I found there. Google Analytics is a great way. It's a free resource for you that you can link into your websites, but also if you're running any kind of social media ads or any kind of content online, you can drop in that link and then get those analytics as well. And it gives you an insight into what people are searching for and how they're engaging with your content. And remember, it's free, right? So digital marketing can be very cost efficient. We just have to know what tools are available to us and really take advantage of them. So here are some, so we have the big word cloud, and I wanted to pare that down and pull out some of the main key channels of digital marketing. So social media was the top one. We talked about website, email marketing. We talked about email marketing as well. YouTube. I don't know if I saw anyone drop YouTube in the chat. Does anyone have a YouTube channel that they post to along with their podcast? Johnny, yes, yes, yes. Everyone. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. So YouTube is another great way, as you know, to also boost your SEO as well as expand your digital footprint. And then we have some other ones that are a little bit less prominent, but can also be quite effective, which includes blogging. So for Angel, I love the stories that you're telling with your podcast. And my question is, for someone who loves to read like me, do you have that in a blog format, right? Do you have these story? And this is without me having actually listened to the podcast, so I'm projecting my idea of what the podcast actually is, but I imagine it's a series of stories, right? Well, for someone who loves to read blogs, like that's great blog content to consume as well. I'm going to pop over here. Yeah. And then we have text messaging. How many of you guys are texting your listeners and saying, hey guys, got a new episode, or hey guys, come hang out with us tonight. We're going to be live at 7 p.m. That's a great way. Now, text messaging is much more intimate, right? And so when we think about social media, that's the least invasive, right? People come to you. You don't necessarily go to them unless you're dropping into their DMs, which is almost like a text message these days. And then we have email marketing, which is a little bit more invasive, right? Because you're dropping into their inbox, but they can delete that email. They don't necessarily have to respond. You might get that click. When you look at the analytics, you might see 50% of those people open your email, but from there, how many people are actually clicking and engaging with your podcast? Well, that number declines, right? So when we think about email marketing, that's another way. When we think about online advertising, social media advertising, and I'll just throw this out there based on some of the works that I've done with my clients, the way that these algorithms work when we think about Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads, it's machine learning, it's AI, artificial intelligence. These machines, right, they're not real people on the other end that's pushing out your ads and optimizing your ads. They're machines. And so the way it's artificial intelligence, the way they learn is by us feeding them data. So if you buy $250 worth of ad spend, what you're essentially doing is you're feeding the machine $250 worth of data and saying, hey, this is what you have to work with to optimize my ad performance, right? So the higher your spend, the more optimized your performance will be. Also, the more optimized your performance will be, and also the most effective. What we really want to strike a balance to, if you're really on a budget, I've seen a little go a long way with social media ads, right? I've seen $250 be pretty effective. The trick is to shorten the timeline, right? So if I have $250, I don't want to spread that out over a year. That's not going to be effective. I want to concentrate that into maybe 2 weeks, right? I typically recommend clients put $500 per month into an ad. And that doesn't mean that every single month you have to be spending $500. Maybe you want to run a 3-month campaign. That's $500 a month. For small business clients that are making a lot more money, that recommendation goes up to about $2,000, at least $2,000 a month. But you can do a lot with a little bit. The key with social media ads is having really great content, like visual content that people can click on, and then also making sure that we're optimizing in terms of how much time we're allocating to our campaign. And then we talked about search engine optimization. And this really goes towards one, again, having established platforms for a long time. And then two, making sure that whenever we're posting to our platforms that we're using those keywords. It doesn't mean overload your website with a bunch of keywords so that people click. That's not the way to go, because when we think about search engine optimization, they're also looking at quality of content. And when we think about YouTube, they're looking at frequency of content, which is why it's so important for us to be consistent with our podcast and with how often we're going. So if we're telling our customers, like our listeners, hey, we're going to be here weekly at 7 p.m., we better be there weekly at 7 p.m. If we want to grow our YouTube channel and grow it to a place that we can optimize, we need to YouTube is going to prioritize channels that post more frequently. Why? Because like that's how YouTube makes money. Like that's how they get people to visit the site, right? The more content they have, the more people are going to come, and the more variety of content that they have that's available to those 5 billion people that are online. So they're going to prioritize channels that post more frequently. Now, when we talk about how frequently to post or how frequently to be on, if you're not a YouTuber, right? You're a podcaster. But there are some channels that you can use to distribute your podcast across YouTube and also across social media. So if you've ever heard about StreamYard, that's one of my favorite platforms to use, because it really allows us to do a lot with with just a short period of time. We can schedule content to go out. With one of my clients, she actually they do video podcasts. So with StreamYard, you can actually, depending on what tier you are, but you can actually strip the audio from those video podcasts, from those videos. And then also and then you can strip the audio and then use that audio for your podcast. And it's pretty high quality, I think. So, so StreamYard gives you a lot of flexibility, but then you can schedule, right? So let's say you're like, hey, I have this new season coming. I'm planning it out. I'm going to create 10 episodes or how many episodes. And then I want this to launch and I want these episodes to come out weekly. Well, of course, you can schedule those through your podcast platform, but you can also schedule those on StreamYard and have those go out automatically across all of your platforms at a specific time. This is a really great way to increase engagement without having to work so hard. Okay, so there are tons of ways to market your podcast online. You might feel a little bit overwhelmed by all of the options. I don't get the feeling that you feel overwhelmed. I think a lot of you on this call have a really strong hold on your digital marketing and have some really great ideas for how you're connecting with your audiences outside of your podcast. But if you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, it's okay. Don't forget to breathe. You got this. Have fun with it. That's what I say about technology. That's what I say about marketing, is the more that we can have fun with it and make it an enjoyable experience for us, well, that's going to translate to our audience as well. right? So if you're doing email marketing, how can I have fun with my email marketing, right? You don't have to put out boring, stale, cold emails. You don't have to suffer from perfectionism of, hey, this isn't beautiful or it isn't perfect. Really focus on, well, how am I connecting with my customer? How am I telling the story that I want to tell? And how is this really making that impact and getting them to take action? All right, so let's take a look at a couple of examples, and I just want to do a quick time check. So we have about 22 minutes or so. So, Two Sisters podcast. This is one of my favorite podcasters. And excuse me really quickly. These are sisters, Melissa and Christy, and they're all about helping individuals discover the power within to do the inner work needed to improve and move forward. So both of these, they're sisters, but individually, they're also coaches. Melissa is a self-love coach. So she comes from the perspective of, if there's a conflict in a relationship, how do I look at myself and within and what's happening within my own body? And how can what can I do to change my behavior so that the situation changes, right? And then Christy is a relationship coach. So she really looks at the dynamic between the two parties and how they're interacting with each other. So it's more of an external approach as well. So when they come together, they play off of each other. And of course, they're sisters. If you can't tell from this picture, they absolutely love each other and they're a lot of fun to listen to. And you can learn more about them at twosisterspodcast.net. The second one that we're talking about is Jerry. He's another one of my favorite, the Sports Lounge podcast, and we talked briefly about him a little bit earlier. His podcast was created to talk about mental health and provide athletes with resources and explore different career paths following high school and collegiate sports. So Jerry saw this gap. And this is also because of his personal experience as an athlete of, hey, when I graduated from high school and then I went to college, sorry, when I graduated from college, I had this dream of becoming a professional athlete. That didn't happen. But now I'm identified with being an athlete. Now I have to go and I have to sit in a 9 to 5 job. I have to sit in a cubicle at a desk, and it's so different from the world that I'm used to that it impacts me, right? And I'm having a really, really hard time now with adjusting to my new life. So Jerry talks about the toll that making a transition like that can take on your mental health. And he realized that there are a lot of athletes who maybe didn't make it big or they didn't go pro, but they still love sports. But now they're struggling with, how do I find a way to exercise this passion that I have while also releasing this identity I have of being an athlete? Because now, even though maybe I still do athletics, I'm not necessarily an athlete. I'm a professional. I'm a police officer. I am an entrepreneur now. I work at a 9 to 5. Maybe I work at a 9 to 5 job and I'm an executive. So how do we make that transition? How do we help athletes transition from collegiate sports to life after sports and to really integrate into society? All right, so choose your adventure. So we're going to look at some examples from these two podcasters, and I want to kind of put the ball in your court of where you want to go first. So we have social media, website, YouTube, and email. What examples would you like to check out first?
Website.
Cool. All right. So let's take a look at the website. Cool. Okay, so this is going to be Jerry's website. This is a website. I'm curious to see from you, what are some of the things that you notice off the bat when you look at this website? what are some of the things you like? What are some of the things that that really stand out to you? You can drop those in the chat. Oh, you can't see. My bad. I'm sorry. Let me share this tab instead. Sorry about that. All right, so here's his website. Should be able to see it now. And this is just kind of where we're landing. So this is the landing page. This is where we start. What do you see here? And we'll click through a few other tabs as well, and we'll scroll down. You like the subscribe button? It's really prominent, right? The basketball, yep. So we immediately feel sports, right? Merchandise, yep. So we talked a little bit about this, how your website is your home for your podcast. It's a portal into other ways to experience your podcast, but also to monetize with merchandise. So I'll scroll down. So this is Jerry. Jerry is really passionate again about mental health and athletes. So he has some merchandise that he's created and he wants people to buy it. So he's taking some photos and we have those here so you can see what those looks like. And you can shop for those. We've got some episodes. All right. Okay. And actually, last episode was from March, so you might want to reach out to Jerry and encourage him to continue his podcast. All right. So here are some ways. So when we talked about a little bit earlier about embedding your podcast into your website, this is one way to do it, right? Just having links there. Have a little bit more information about what this podcast is about. He's also collecting some sports highlights reels, so he has those here. He also has his social media here, so you can engage with him in another way. And then he has his subscribe section so that you can receive email marketing updates, right? And that's just on the first front page. We have all of that information. And if we click through, we'll see merchandise. We can see some of those sports highlights. He also has some resources as well for students and then also for athletes and their mental health, right? So this really feeds into his cause and what he cares about in his stories. So if listeners are like, hey, I want to check out his website and learn a little bit more, if they are struggling, well, here's some resources for them, right? All right, so let's go back and then of course contact and the subscribe now button. If we click the subscribe now button, it goes to Spotify. Okay, so we're back here. Where do we want to travel and adventure to next? YouTube. Cool. Let's see what's going on with the YouTube. All right, Two Sisters. Cool. And I'm actually going to pause this because it's going to be really loud. So this is Two Sisters podcast. They have 4 subscribers. So go ahead, go over there, like them, show them some support, give them some love. They've had their podcast for about a year. And they have about a little bit over 40 episodes. And you can see their video podcasts actually get a lot more views than these. So these are, when we look at these episodes, these are audio episodes. So if I were to click into them, it's just the audio. There is no video component to it. Whereas these, they have their audio episodes here, and then they come over and they'll have they'll take a break and they'll do some live episodes for their viewers where they have a little bit more connection and touch point there. So just another way for viewers. When we think about why people like to listen to podcasts, they like the content, but they typically like the host as well, right? So how do we create spaces where they can really get to know you a little bit better? Well, this is one way to do that, right? Okay, so we have YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here. Okay, where do we want to go next? We only have two options. We have email and social media. Social, cool. All right, so when we look at social media. Okay, so we have Two Sisters podcast. I remember when is this going to make me log in? I think it actually might. When we look at social media, one of the things that Corey and I had talked about before was the fact that when we look at the name, it's 2_sisters podcast. So when we talk about SEO, we want to make sure that when we are setting up our social media accounts, and again, it sounds like for a majority of us, we probably already have these platforms established. We want to make sure that we're doing our research ahead of time before we even set up our podcast and start naming our podcast to see what kind of competition exists out there for our podcast and for our podcast name. Just because we want to have that searchability. Like we want, if someone put in Two Sisters podcast, we want our podcast to be the first thing that come up. We don't want another Two Sisters podcast to come up, which actually typically happens quite a bit with this podcast. But the more content that they put out, the bigger their following, the higher their SEO ranking is going to be. But you're still competing with two other podcasts that are called Two Sisters and who are actually pretty active. So we have some posts, right? So they have some lives here. We have some reels with their audio. We have an Insta bio as well. So if you wanted to learn a little bit more about their website, get on our links, you can check out their latest episode, go to their website, book a call, get on the list. Social media is a great way so when we think about our digital marketing, we want it all to be integrated. So we want our website to feed into social media to feed into our website to feed into email marketing, and we want it to be an ecosystem. So that's when we think about other channels beyond social media, how can we build our ecosystem? Okay, and then the last one is going to be email marketing. So we'll go over here to the email marketing. Let's see what's going to happen here. So this is what it looks like. So here's an email. So he's got a new episode tackling the stigma of mental health. That's his guest. So when his guest gets this, she'll be happy because she's like, oh, wow, you're promoting it. She's a mental health professional as well, so she has a lot of information to share. Immediately, I know, okay, there's a new podcast episode. I can just click here, listen now. And then we have a short summary from Jerry about what this is, a quick screenshot, and an invitation to join the show, right? And then some social media stuff. Right. Again, it's really important to think about how can we be more creative with our social media marketing. So maybe it's not just saying, hey, there's a new episode out. You might deliver some exclusive content that your guests didn't get when they were listening to the website, when they were listening to the podcast. Maybe it's a featured blog from your guest that you want to share via email marketing that they can't find anywhere else. We want to give people a reason why. Why should I subscribe to your email list if I'm already following on Instagram and I'm already getting the same content, right? So we want to think about how do we diversify our content across. All right, and then your toolkit. So here are a few items in the toolkit, and we're almost here at the end. But here's some items in your digital toolkit. We've talked about these. These are kind of the core things that I think if you're getting started with digital marketing that we want to have at our fingertips. Social media platforms is a great way, again, cost efficient. If you don't have a website, it's free to set up social media platforms. Once you set up your social media platforms and you're starting to engage there, then you might consider, okay, let me invest in really creating a home for my podcast. So I'm going to build a website. This is a really great way to promote some of your merchandise, to get people to subscribe to your email list. And on social media, you can also do merchandise as well. But in order to, and if you've ever tried to launch a, a store on Instagram, then you know you need to have it. The requirement to launch a store on Instagram is that you have a domain. So that's why it's so important, again, that we have a website, because those platforms are going to double check and they're going to be like, are you legit or are you just making something up, right? So having a domain really establishes, again, that credibility so that when you want to go and you want to do more on these platforms, you're able to do so. YouTube channel. We talked a little bit about YouTube. A really great way. It's a visual element, a different way for customers to connect with you and learn more about you outside of your podcast. You can also collaborate with other influencers, other YouTubers, and podcasters through your YouTube channel, and then also lends to discoverability. So if someone is on YouTube and they've been listening to your podcast and Google recommends a video for them to watch, and they're like, oh, wow, I was just listening to this podcast, the chances of them clicking on that video and listening are a lot higher. Or clicking on the video and watching are a lot higher. And then email marketing. So this is a really great way to build your email list, which we call leads. So these are the people who are in your pipeline that you can continue to market to in other ways. So once you capture those emails, right, then you can continue to marketing to those folks. Your contact list, built that out, and also the personalization piece that I mentioned earlier as well. And then with this, the other thing that I wanted to offer to you is an accelerator program. So my company, we work again with small businesses and solopreneurs so that you don't have to do all of this alone. So if it does feel a little bit overwhelming, if you are looking for more guidance on how to optimize the platforms that you're already using, or you're looking to launch new platforms, you have a resource in me and my team to help you get there. What we offer are simple websites, email templates for you. We also can do a brand style guide. So brand style guides, if you have an established brand and you want to know what you want to have your fonts and your colors at your fingertips, as well as your logo and maybe some ideas for visual elements of how to make your podcast really stand out online. A brand style guide is a really great way to do that. Social media banners. We want to make sure that whenever someone searches for your website, that they know exactly where they are. They're not like, oh, is this Instagram the same Instagram for that website that I was just on? Is this the website for the podcast that I was listening to? We want to make sure that wherever they land, that it really evokes the spirit of your brand, and they know, hey, this is them, and they feel confident in taking action. And then social media templates. I know social media can be really tough. This is not a social media webinar. There's so many tips on social media. Personally, I think templates are a great way to break up your content, but we don't want to have, 20 templates back to back. Really, we need to have some organic content. And so some other ideas as well are you can use stock videos. if you're uncomfortable with putting yourself out there. I'll say this, if you're a podcaster and this is your brand and you're really trying to make this, kind of your form of living, you're going to have to get comfortable with really connecting with your audience. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go on video, but really consider it. When we're thinking about scaling and growing, again, remember, people like to learn in different ways. So there's a huge part of your audience that you might be missing out on by not delivering video content. I know videos are really tough. They're hard. They take a lot of work and effort, but they can be effective if done well. Social media templates, and then InstaBio, which is a link. So we know on Instagram, they only allow you to have one link. At Instagram, an InstaBio or a Linktree is a really great way to direct people to your other platforms from Instagram. And then you can also use that link on other platforms as well. Like you can use it anywhere. Even if you're, let's say you're networking and you're like, hey guys, check me out, drop it down that InstaBio, and those folks can go and engage with you in those different ways. And then coming soon, Corey and I have talked about building your digital strategy, a 4-week challenge. So we're going to pull together a webinar where we talk about how to build a solid digital marketing strategy. So all the things that we've talked about today, how do you actually deploy that? And what does that look like? There are a lot of things, a lot of details that we weren't able to get into. This is just kind of a brief, overall, broad summary and introduction to digital marketing. But when we really sit down and we parse it out and we look at our channels, there's so much that we can be doing, right? And this is a real creative, fun way. And I think when you really sit down and you start putting on paper your ideas, you'll bring your vision to life. And then next steps. So this is me. I have weekly office hours. If you want to just drop a chat, if after this call you have more questions or you would like to connect with me, feel free to send Corey a note. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I love LinkedIn. If you contact me on LinkedIn, I'm pretty responsive. I'm not as responsive on my other channels, but LinkedIn is one of is where I like to be, just because I have more of a professional background, and so a lot of my contacts are there. And then here's my email as well if you'd like to reach out to me, and then also my website if you want to check that out. And that's it. So I will open it up to any questions that you might have, and then we can kind of have a conversation.
Don't be shy now, guys. If you have please feel free to ask.
Yeah, I had one.
Okay.
Question. You mentioned the $500. I put it in the chat, but I guess you didn't see it. The $500. Do you use that on one platform or you spread that across multiple?
You're muted. I can't hear you.
I apologize. Sorry. When I think about when I said $500, I was specifically thinking about Facebook. So one platform. Remember what we said about how these algorithms work. They feed off of data, right? So the more money we put into them, the more data they collect. And so if you're spreading that $500 across several platforms, it's going to dilute the amount of data that we're feeding the algorithm so that they can better optimize our marketing, or optimize our ads. So I think Facebook, for my clients, I've had the most success on Facebook when it comes to ads. And of course, Facebook owns Instagram. So if you feed $500 into Facebook, those ads are also going to be showing up on Instagram. When it comes to Google ads, it's a little bit of it's a lot tougher because there's a lot more competition there, and so the ad spend has to be a lot higher. But I think Facebook is a really great place to start.
Reason I asked is because I use Facebook and I use Twitter, so
Yep, both really great platforms. And then what are you currently doing on Facebook? What kind of success have you seen so far?
I pulled in some, newer subscribers or so forth. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, and then would you say what's your average spend on Facebook in
Well,
total?
I haven't done it in a while, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that and marketing and ads are a little bit tough too when we think about what we're marketing and what we're trying to get out of it. If you're marketing something, for example, with Melissa, she also has a personal brand and we do weekly reading clubs. We put, I think, $250 into it and we grew our email list by 100 people. But that was a free event and there was a free program that we were offering. So we weren't, asking people to take a huge leap and purchase something. We just want to get some leads. We want to get people on our list. And then from there, now we're email marketing, right? And we're engaging with those folks in different ways. So I think it's great for lead generation because then you can then take those capture that information, that contact information, and continue your marketing on other platforms. um, so I would say when we really think about social media marketing, we want to think about what we want to get out of it. And it's not always that we want to get somebody to buy something. I think that's the harder sell.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions or thoughts? How did I do today? Is this okay?
Oh, Johnny, before you left, he said
Uh,
it was a great presentation.
yeah, I saw that. Um, Anything else or questions or thoughts?
No, thank you, Clary. This has been great.
Wonderful. Well, I hope it was helpful and that you got something out of it. You have my contact information. Again, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or you can shoot Corey a message, and then we can connect from there. Thanks.
They can also reach out to you if you're a member of the BPA.
Yeah.
Clary's also, you can reach out to her there as well. So,
Yes.
well,
I'm on
thank you,
BPA.
Clary. Really appreciate you doing this and being here. I know this went a little bit longer than everybody expected. We started a little late, but thank you guys for sticking it through. Um, if you haven't joined, excuse me, if you haven't signed up for our mailing list to be updated of future events like this, please go to blackpodnews.com and join our newsletter. If you are interested, if you're watching this on the replay and you're interested in learning more about our community, you can go to blackpodcastersassociation.com as well as follow us on our social media. So thank you everyone for joining us. Again, thank you, Clary. Please, guys, if you have any questions, reach out to her and be on the lookout. We're going to be rolling out some stuff in the future. So make sure you join that newsletter. Make sure you stay active in the group and everyone have a good night.
Good night. Corey, do you have a second?
Yeah.